They are the Brotherhood of Demigods, the Golden Legion, the Emperor's 10,000. They are known by 1,000 names, but to the galaxy as a whole, they are the Adeptus Custodes. The Custodes originated in the half-remembered days of the Terran Unification Wars. Drawn from the children of Terra's nobility, even as the wars to consolidate the Emperor's rule across the planet still raged. The Custodes were bodyguards and hostages both. Taken in late infancy, each was resculpted through a long-forgotten process of biogenetic alchemy, more grueling than even the creation of modern Primaris Astartes. The result was a warrior greater in stature, reflex, mind, and might than anything seen before. Every Custodes was a genetic work of art, closer to the Emperor's own Primarchs than to the Thunder Warriors who served as his first genetically enhanced army. Indeed, when the Thunder Warriors had served their purpose in uniting Earth, and the time came for them, as outdated and unreliable prototypes, to be quietly retired, it was the Custodes that carried out the bloody deed atop Mount Ararat. Through the long years of the Great Crusade, the Custodes filled a multitude of roles. Primarily, they were the Emperor's personal bodyguard and war host, accompanying him on campaigns and aiding in the search for his lost sons. One of their most significant deployments was to the world of Gyros Thravian. With the Emperor at their head, they saved the Primarchs Horus Lupercal, Rogel Dawn, and Mortarion from destruction at the hands of the immense Orc warboss, Garkul Blackfang. It is said that of the 1,000 custodians to be deployed, only 3 fell, at the cost of 100,000 orcs. The names of these 3 fallen Custodes were carved into the Emperor's armor, an accolade awarded not even to his own sons. It is also likely that the Custodes were present during the persecution of the 2 lost Primarchs and their legions, though, as with anything relating to the Forgotten and the Purged, nearly all has been lost to myth and legend. In addition to their role as warriors and guardians of the Emperor, the Custodians acted as emissaries between the Emperor and his Primarchs. They were entrusted with carrying his orders, relaying information on the progress of the Great Crusade, and ensuring that his vision of a united galaxy came to pass. In a move that speaks of some limited vision of things to come, some were also assigned to keep watch over those Primarchs who had failed to meet the Emperor's standards of a rapid, secular conquest of humanity. Chief amongst them was the soon-to-be Minister of Chaos Absolute, Lorgar Aurelian. Such steps were not sufficient to prevent the great cataclysm of the Horus Heresy, and when the time came for the traitors to show their true colors, the Custodes assigned to the traitor legions were isolated from their support. None would survive long enough to report back to the Emperor. Those assigned to Lorgar found themselves massacred on Istvan V, along with the loyalist Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamander's legions. The nearly 1,000 Custodes sent with Leman Russ to apprehend the traitorous Magnus the Red met a similar fate, as they found themselves cut down in droves by the psychic powers of the 1,000 Suns. But the bloodiest struggle the Custodes would endure during the Heresy would come not from the 1,000 Suns' homeworld of Prospero, nor even from the Siege of Terra itself, but from the veiled events of the war within the Webway. This clandestine war was propagated when Magnus the Red broke the psychic seals surrounding the Imperial Webway project, which would have freed humanity from its reliance on the warp for interstellar travel. This campaign saw nearly the entirety of the Custodes along with the Sisters of Silence enter the Webway portal beneath the Golden Throne, and for 5 long years they battled the hordes of demons and traitor Astartes that sought to breach it. Had they failed, all of Terra would have been overrun by demonic forces, but victory cost the Custodes more than 9,000 dead, as well as the lives of its 3 commanding tribunes. Such losses meant that, by the time Horus himself came to Terra, the Custodes were a shadow of their former strength. Though they gave all they could to defend their liege, in the end it was not enough. The Emperor was laid low by the dying blow of the arch-traitor, and forever interred within the Golden Throne. the Custodes turned from the wider Imperium and threw themselves into the duty they had ultimately failed, the defense of the Emperor's mortal form. They now lived beneath the shadow of the Emperor's internment. Many eschewed their armor in shame, whilst others simply abandoned the deep red cloaks of office for a black shroud of mourning. At the behest of Rabute Gilliman, one of the few remaining loyalist Primarchs, the Custodes agreed to the Edict of Restraint and were confined to Terra and the Sol system. Though over the long millennia that followed, the Custodes were able to rebuild their strength, they were bound to never leave the solar system. Aside from a brief, extraordinary intervention to stop the rule of the Mad Ecclesiarch Gog Van Dyer during the Age of Apostasy, the Custodes' actions would be limited to